we've got quite a few people still joining on. So as usual, we're going to kick off probably about 5 past, just to give everybody a chance to jump on. So we're going to go quiet for the next couple of minutes or so. So there's not a problem with your sound or anything like that. We'll look to start about 5 past. In the meantime, I've just added links in for Trevor's website, where you can have a look at his training site, also his LinkedIn profile. Feel free to connect with Trevor. He'll be updating loads of content, I'm sure, on his feed as well. So useful connection.
Absolutely.
And I've just popped in there as well my profile and also the SourceBreaker company page as well. If you get following that, there'll be loads more content that'll be useful for you guys as well. So I'm just going to pop things on hold for the time being, so you won't hear anything from us again now till about 5 past. I'll just pop in the chat to let everybody know when we're kicking off as well. Cheers, guys.
Steve, feel free to do whatever you want with the recording as well.
Thanks, Trev.
No problem, mate. Tim should probably just give it another couple of minutes, just while there's still more people coming in to the webinar. And,
yeah, guys, we'll give another minute or so. Another minute or so, and we'll kick off. Okay, right, we're now at 5 past, so we're going to get ourselves started. Just to introduce Trevor, I know a whole lot of you guys on this webinar will be very, very familiar with Trevor and his training content. But Trevor is one of the main people I wanted to get on this. He's one of the people I've known for quite a few years. He was an early adopter of SourceBreaker back in its earliest stages. Had the privilege of knowing Trev for quite a few years now. I know the content that he does for literally hundreds of our mutual customers is incredibly well received, really, really well respected trainer. I think one of the things with Trevor as well, which is really important to mention, is Trevor's also still a recruiter himself, owns his own recruitment company. And so everything you're going to hear from Trevor is live, current content that he actually uses himself when winning business. So in very, very capable hands. He's going to cover some pretty handy stuff to make sure you guys have a very much, unique advantage in all the roles that you're working on. I don't want to jump in too much on his intro, so I'll let him kick off now. But thanks for coming, Trev. Much appreciated.
Thanks very much, Steve. No, I really appreciate it. Thank you very much for the invite. Thanks to Hannah from last week for kicking this off. And thanks to all of you guys for spending some time with us this afternoon. So it's not unappreciated. I really appreciate it. Yeah, Steve, listen, no more need for an intro. I am still a recruiter, and that's really, really important to me, because all of the content that I talk about, everything that I discuss with you is being road tested. My little agency that trades in the US is a guinea pig for all of my content, right? If the content doesn't work, we don't do it anymore. So there's nothing on here that isn't being used right now. So let's set the scene. Let me share my screen and set the scene. I'm going to present for a while, and then we'll do a Q&A thereafter, okay? And every single thing that I speak about today, I'm up here to be shot at. If you think that silly old bald geezer, he's gone round the bend and this is all rubbish, then please let me know, and we'll have a discussion. Probably in about 5 or 6 minutes we'll decide I'm right. But anyway, let's crack on. Let's get moving, right? So I'm going to share my screen now. I've got a slide deck for you, which I'm going to really have a rip through it, really have a go at it, and then any questions you've got, let's crack on there afterwards. So, right. Can you see my screen? Steve, you see my screen okay? Right, are we all good? Just before I get going, I want to make sure you can see my screen. Got it, Steve, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely, mate. So I stupidly put you on mute and then started talking.
Fine, no problem at all. Right, okay, so let's get moving. So, job qualification. Just by way of an introduction, what I'm not going to do, right? What I'm not going to do is the really basic stuff. Right, so this session assumes the following. You've done all of the basic questions. You found out the skill set. You found out the background where they want people to work from. You found out perhaps where you can headhunt from, how many locations, remuneration. You found out all of that good stuff, right? So this is where this kicks off. I'm going to make the assumption that we haven't been able to sell a recruitment product. If you don't know what a recruitment product is, a little bit more about that in a moment. And I'm going to make the assumption that on this particular permanent requirement, you haven't been able to sell a retained search. So that's where we are right now. We've done all that good basic stuff that's led us into the bit where we want to really qualify it, where we want to really control it, where we want to gather and gain that unfair advantage. In other words, we want to shut the door on all of our competition so we can come off of that job spec call and say to anyone that's listening, I'm going to fill that. But first, a piece of methodology for you, a methodology that I came up with a little while ago, and it's called the buyer staircase, okay? For those of you that worked with me previously, you may well have seen this before. For those of you that haven't, it's a pretty worthwhile piece of methodology, I would suggest. Now, as recruitment business owners, as recruitment business leaders, and actually as consultants, quite often what happens, we bring our consultants in on the bottom step of the buyer staircase, which for me is a bit bonkers. You hear the conversation that I'm just about to tell you on sales floors all day long. When the leaders in the business are talking to rookies, they say things like, just get them a job on. Just let them get a job on. Just let them get some CVs out. Just let them get through a process. And what we do is we indoctrinate our rookies on the bottom step of the buyer staircase. In other words, we institutionalize our rookies on contingent, multi-agent, sludge, crap, filth, dregs of the market. And what we see is our rookies, when they're working in that way, they're probably filling 1 in 10, right? So think about it like this. If I'm a rookie and I've got to do perm deal, I've got to do 2 perm deals a month to achieve my target, and I'm working contingent, multi-agent, multi-agency rubbish, right? Because it is rubbish. I've got to pick up 20 jobs a month just to achieve target. Now, the future of contingent, multi-agent, well, actually, there isn't one. Because my belief is if you are currently continuously, consistently working contingent multi-agent recruitment, your opportunity to be consistently successful as a recruiter will be extinct in 24 months. And what I mean by that, if you're a 360 player, if you're a 360 niche recruiter, let's say success starts at 150 grand a year as a recruiter, that's gone if you continue to work contingent multi-agent. But what we do as recruiters, we're a bit bonkers, right? So we spend that first 6 months trying to fight off all the other recruitment agencies, trying to get a piece of the pie, trying to add some value to the client, because we believe we can get on step 2. We're going to make our way up the step. Step 2 is where we might be able to talk to our client and get some interview slots, because we've worked so hard, we've proved ourselves a little bit. We're now going to say, excuse me a second. We've worked really hard on some requirements, had a bit of success. On the next job brief, I'm going to get some interview slots. We then work with interview slots because we know now our fill rates start to come down. Our fill rates start to get a little bit sensible. Not great, but a little bit sensible, right? But we think if we work with interview slots for 6 months, then what I can do on a job brief after that, I can start asking for exclusivity with interview slots. I can say, right, now I can get a bit of exclusivity, some interview slots, and guess what happens? My fill rates go down to 1 in 3, 1 in 2, so everything starts to be sensible. When I started out in recruitment, we used to wear the amount of jobs we had as a badge of honor. That's rubbish, man. If I look at a recruiter's desk now and they've got 2 properly qualified A-grade jobs, exclusivity, interview slots, I'm comfortable they're going to achieve target. I look at the recruiter that comes to me and says, I've just picked up 15 jobs plus. 3 weeks time, they've sent multiple CVs, got no control, got no feedback, wasted a month, missed target, going to get a shoe in. Not the way forward. But there's 2 more steps. In permanent recruitment, there's 2 more steps. Step 3 is where you want to start to live. Step 3 is the minimum requirement, really, right? But step 4 is a retained search. Now, that's another webinar just in itself, and we can do another one another day. I'll do as many as Steve wants me to. I've got no problem at all. But the retained search actually achieves the 1 in 1 because we get a partnership payment up front. We start to receive some revenue very, very early on in the process. We can build some revenue straight away. We're looking good. But the future, and actually the future is now, is a bespoke productized solution. At the RDLC, where I do a lot of my training, a lot of my work with Gary and Dean over there, we productize so many agencies and taught agencies how to sell products. Just to give you a little lead into this mindset, I would suggest we start thinking about stopping selling people and start thinking about selling solution and selling product. Going to be something on J9 Online, on J9 Train very, very soon around this, which is my online training product, basically. So what tends to happen is our recruiters huff and puff and they try and make their way all over the top of it by a staircase. When in reality, as soon as we get a rookie on board, we should start their default setting up high. We should start their default setting here. Or if we haven't got products, we should start them at least on step 4, because we know full well that it's far easier to fall down the staircase than it is to have to keep making our way up it. Okay? So for me, the default setting as a minimum should be the retained search. Every single time we pick up a job brief, we should be looking to qualify a retained search. Oh no, you can't do a retained search, Mr. Client? No problem at all. I'll take some exclusivity of interview slots. Oh right, you've already got another partner on it. Okay, no problem at all. I'll just have 3 interview slots for Friday of next week. What you're doing is where you stop, right? Where you start is where I stop. I refuse to work contingent because I can't give the client any value and they can't give me any value in return. So in this particular session, we're not going to focus on the retainer or the product because they are webinars on their own. Where we're going to focus today is here. We're going to focus on getting you loads of exclusivity. We're going to focus on making sure you get interview slots, and we're going to focus on making sure you stay away from being a contingent multi-agent recruiter. We've been trying to breathe life into that contingent carcass for the last 10 years, and it still ain't working because there's just no value. Right, let's move on. Qualification and control. This is so important that I've given it its own slide, right? I probably engage face-to-face with around 50 agencies currently as a trainer. And so often I'll probably get a phone call once a week from my client saying, Trev, do us a favor, can you come in and can you do us some training on controlling a job process? I say, no, it's impossible. It's impossible, because you cannot control the job. You cannot control the job process after you've qualified the role. The qualification and control must be done at the same time. You must get control at job briefing stage, or you'll never get it. The horse has bolted. Your opportunity's gone. You must get control when you qualify the job, or you will not get control. If you don't get control when you're qualifying, then for me, it probably becomes a passive search, something I'm not going to work anyway. So this is so important. I gave it its own slide. While these two things are separate, you must qualify and control at the same time, on the same call, no matter what. Let's move on. Creating the need. So remember where we're at. What we've done, right, is we've qualified, we've done all the basic qualification that every recruiter in the whole world does, right? It's all done. Now we've got to start creating a need in our customer to allow us to pitch for some exclusivity. So the need leads to the pitch that leads to the close, and they're all intrinsically linked together. How do we create need? We create need by big, juicy, nice, sequential, open questions. Very, very simple question that I'd always save until now. Mr. or Mrs. Client, what's the ideal start date for the successful candidate? Client tells us the date. We then say, right, what's the impact on you? I'm a massive fan of the impact question. Anyone that knows me will tell you I've been a fan of the impact question for years. What's the impact on you? What's the impact on you, Mr. or Mrs. Client, if the candidate doesn't start when you need them to, right? And when you ask the impact question, never ask it about the client's business, about their team, about their business area. Make it big, make it bold, make it just about them. What's the impact on you if the candidate doesn't start when you need them to? What you're looking for here is the need. The client's going to say to you, oh, crikey, project's going to fall behind, or I'm going to have to jump in and do the work myself, so my social life's going to go out the window, or my boss is going to be breathing down my neck. So what you've done, by a nice little bit of sequential questioning, you've just started to create the first need that you can pitch with to get your exclusivity and interview slots. The second piece of sequential questioning, excuse me, the old throat's drying out, we're going to use is around the caliber of the candidate. Mr. or Mrs. Client, how important is the caliber of the candidate for this particular hire? How key is the quality of the candidate for this particular hire? Oh, it's very right. So what are we talking here? Are we talking a top 5% market? Are we talking top 5% in the market, top 10% in the market? Guess what? Your client's always going to ask for top 5%. Okay, do you know what? I'm sure they're aware then that we're in the middle of the most fierce war on talent there's ever been for skilled resource. Actually, SourceBreaker will help us find them, but that's another story which we can talk about later. The good news is that I can show you a way to attract and retain the top 5% of candidates in market, bearing in mind you give me a little bit of commitment coming back the other way. Do not pitch now. Separate your need creating from your pitch. Never question pitch, because you dilute the power of your pitch. Create your needs first. Tease the client by saying, okay, we'll come back to that, and then pitch afterwards. So there are two very, very different sections of the job qualification call. Create the need, then pitch. Create the need, then pitch. Don't create need, pitch, create need, pitch. It's not the way forward. You'll dilute your power. So once again, a nice little bit of sequential question. There's lots of other examples of these. They're all on the training platform that we run. There's lots of different examples of big, juicy sequences of need creating questions to help you get better, not just in job qualification, but in business development, in objection handling, in all those great areas that we need to be good at to be great recruiters. So we've now created the need by a nice bit of sequential questioning. We're now going to move on to the pitch. I've got some news for you. There's currently over 600 people on this webinar. At least 75% of you don't know how to pitch. And that is a crying shame, because pitching is the big fun part of the job. And like anything else, I'm a big fan as a recruiter, as a coach, as a trainer, as a mentor, of simple methodologies that you can remember, that you can use, that you can scale, that work. So there's a methodology behind pitching, and I'm just about to show you it now. Before I do that, remember, all of your pitches are based around 3 different things. There are only ever 3 reasons that clients use recruiters. They use recruiters because we can find results that they can't. And once again, SourceBreaker allows us to do that. They use recruiters because we can find better results than they can in time scales that they can't. And also, when we do those 2 things together, then effectively we become cost effective from a money perspective. So guess what? There are only ever 3 reasons that clients use recruiters: results, time, and money. RTM. And when you think about your questions to create need, and when you think about your pitches that are sexy and seductive and win you business, always about results, time, and money. Always. So the methodology, the way that I like to pitch. Every single pitch starts as a summary of what the client's told you, because what it does, it makes any of their challenges, any of their pain, any of their need. When you summarize what the client's just told you in the great questions you've asked, you make their needs big and bright before you solve them and close them off. Then we segue. Segue is a preamble, a statement that leads us into the pitch. And whatever you're pitching, this methodology works. In whatever part of your job, this methodology works. The summary and the segue is followed by what I call the 4 silver bullets, all with a pause in between. In other words, 4 beautifully crafted, benefit-led bullet points with pauses in between, and we're going to ask for at least 1 affirmation from our client throughout it. And an affirmation is, how does that sound? Or have you heard about that? So keep our client engaged within the pitch. Your first bullet, always get some numbers into your first bullet. Mr. or Mrs. Client, 100% of our customers have found this to be successful whilst saving 50% of their time whilst using this recruitment solution with us. People hang on to numbers, so put numbers into your first bullet point to be effective. Your second bullet point should be a little bit of story selling, be a little bit of insight. In other words, oh, by the way, customer X down the road, one of your competition, they used us exclusively with interview slots on a roll a couple of weeks ago, found an absolute dream candidate, and now they use us exclusively on all their roles. So we're proving we're a live dog in the market, we're proving we're experienced, we're proving we're successful, and we're proving to the client that they should be using us exclusively with interview slots on this particular role. Your third and fourth bullet point are the same. You purely just take answers from the questions that your client's given you, and effectively you turn those answers into benefit-led statements. So what you said earlier, Mr. Client, was you like help with this. Well, we can do that, and the benefit to you is this. So get your recruiter's playbook. Every single recruiter should have a playbook. Get some great questions in there. Get some great pitching statements in there. And the close, by the way, is nice and simple. Just ask for the business and shut your mouth. Just listen, ask for the business, keep quiet. Next one who speaks keeps the kit, right? That's the rules. Okay, so let me give an example. Let me give an example of a pitch. Let's make it real. Let's make it real. An example, exclusivity with interview slots pitch. Okay, so the summary. Thanks very much for taking the time. Oops, sorry. I've just, do I stop sharing my screen there? Still see my screen? Apologies.
I could still see it, but now it's gone again.
Hang on, apologies. Right, where's my screen? How do I get back to my screen now?
So we can see your screen, okay?
I can't see it, that's the problem. I mean, as good as I am, mate, I'm not sure I'll be able to do this, do you know what I mean? 1 second. Let's have a quick look, hang on.
So just while Trevor's doing that, just in terms of questions, guys, what we'll do is look to field questions at the end of the example. So at the end of the demonstration.
Right, why can't I see my screen now? There we go. Right, can everyone see my screen okay? So basically, the summary. Thanks so much for taking the time. To give me that job brief. To summarise, you've said that you must secure the services of a top 5% in-market candidate, and that candidate must be in post within 30 days. You've also suggested that there's a real negative impact on you if this doesn't happen. So you've summarized the client's needs. You've made the needs big and bold. Then you're just going to segue in. So what I'm going to suggest to you is that you work with us, work on this brief with us on an exclusive basis for 14 days with a minimum of 3 confirmed interview slots. Now, let me explain why I'm going to suggest you do that. And now you're going to your 4 bullets. Now you're going to your 4 bullet points. So your first bullet will contain some numbers. When you work with us on an exclusive basis, will you get a much better opportunity to hire a top 5% candidate? I'm not sure if you're aware, Mr. Customer or Mrs. Customer, when you engage multiple partners, all you do is you put us in a fastest finger first foot race. And what you finish up getting is Mr. or Mrs. Right now, rather than Mr. or Mrs. Right for your role. Now, I don't know if you've seen recent stats that were released on Glassdoor, and the REC released these stats as well. And that's that the cost of a bad hire is currently 4.5 times the salary you pay that person whilst they're with you. So if you're going to, don't gamble with that hire, okay? Because, and let me explain a little bit more. Recently, Company X down the road released a brief looking for candidate Y. Now, we consulted with them and asked them, why would they gamble on a hire? It's so important as this one. Okay, why would you place this hire with 6 generalists? They need to work with 1 specialist, saving you time, ensuring you get the best talent, and stopping the best talent getting to your competition. Now, they gave us interview slots. They gave us exclusivity and interview slots. We filled that role. They're delighted. They're now working with us exclusively on every single role they get. So what you're doing, there's your first 2 bullets. The first bullet has some numbers. The second bullet has a story cell. The third and fourth bullet, take what the client has said to you and turn those into benefit-led pitching statements. So take whatever information the client said to you and just turn that into pitching statements, just like the first 2. I can't give you them next. I don't know what the client would have said. The client might have said, yeah, also, really, I spend so much time. I spend so much time doing first interviews. Okay, let's do the first interviews for you. Let's design an interview process for you now. Work with us exclusively. We'll throw that in for free. So you've got all these opportunities, but it's a 4-bullet pitch with the close off the back end. So how do you feel about partnering with us on this role exclusively with interview slots? And that is the summary, the segue, the 4 silver bullets, and the close. Okay. And just a couple of other things before we go to the Q&A. Don't forget control. So the last thing I do before I put the phone down to this particular client on this job qualification call, I say, oh, Mr. Client, before you go, we work slightly differently. We're far more effective in terms of the way we work, ensuring that you get the best talent in the timescale you want. As a result of that, what I'm going to do, I'm going to book 2 things with you now. The first thing I'm going to book is a profile call, because we know that sending CVs is a mug's game, right? I'm going to book a profile call. What's a profile call, Trevor? A profile call is in 48 hours time, I'm going to speak to you. I'm going to talk to you about all of the interested parties in your role, because I know the verbal CV is more powerful than the written one. I'm going to talk to you about all the interested parties in your role. And then the second thing I'm going to book is 3 interview slots in your diary for next Tuesday. So the ones that you're most interested in, you're going to see next Tuesday. So what you've done, you've got the control, qualification and control. And if you're going to get one thing or the other, a lot of people say, well, I'll get exclusivity. Exclusivity means nothing if you don't get interview slots. If anything, interview slots are more important than exclusivity, because they give you a definitive time and a definitive opportunity to get people in front of that client. But we want both. We're greedy. We've got to take other people out of this job. We've got to dominate this job. And the way we dominate this job is a minimum exclusivity and interview slots. And if the client doesn't give you what you need, right? If you don't get what you need from the client, and explain the difference then between active and passive search. Mr. Client, you work for a great organization. If you insist on giving this to 6 partners, if you insist on not being able to give us definitive interview slots, this particular role represents a passive search for me. What a passive search means is that any profile that I find, any profile that I see over the next couple of hours, of course, I'll talk to you about, and then any profile that comes across my desk thereafter, I'll send to you. But actually, what's going to happen is I'm just going to be passive in the search. You deserve an active search. You deserve me to take a full requisition in the market for you, find you Mr. or Mrs. Right, not Mr. or Mrs. Right now. But to do that, I need some commitment from you in the form of exclusivity and interview slots. So give yourself the opportunity to repitch, take what the customer says, and then make a decision from there. Now, I've spoken for about half an hour now, so that's plenty of time. So that's my presentation for you. That's my job qualification in terms of that's the way that I get exclusivity of interview slots. Just to let you know, I don't work any other way. I don't work contingent recruitment. I refuse to do it because for me, you just can't add value. And I now perhaps we can take some questions. So yeah, that's me so far. I think you're mute still, Steve. I can't hear you, mate.
Sorry, mate, waffling on and you can't hear me. I think, yeah, the point about a profile call rather than just the pinging of CVs, the amount of CVs when I was recruiting that you'd end up getting turned down, even though you knew they were bang on, just because the hiring manager identifies something in the CV that they don't particularly like. Whereas obviously getting them on the phone, you've got the ability to sell the dream and get them in. Cool. So guys, feel free to ping away with questions. We've got one from Louise. So at what point in the process, Trevor, do you try and agree the terms and the rates through this process?
Yeah, interestingly, before I get onto the job qualification call, the rates would have been agreed for me, and I never sell on price anyway. If you get listen, if someone talks to you about price, I sell service, right? If someone's continuing trying to talk about price, they're not interested in service. If not interested in service, they're not going to be the girlfriend I'm going to marry, right? So you know, for me, it's all about service. Yeah, they never sell their service cheap, so why should I sell mine? For me, I'll agree terms as early as possible in the process, no matter what. Actually, my terms are non-sign anyway, so they don't actually have to sign my terms because I've set up non-signed terms. But agree terms as early as you can. Clearly, sometimes you can't if you're working, you spec to CV, you're working off the spec, and you're breaking down the front door that way. But agree terms as early as possible. Get it out of the way, get it done, and never make it a big thing. So listen, just got to send my terms over. They're just my terms. No showstoppers in there. A little bit of commerciality. Let's not worry about it. Let's get them done and move on.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So basically, get stuck in early with the terms. And I suppose one of the things then, if you're then getting the blocker on price, where people are overly sensitive on price, is when you then wait for them to not get the role filled by the cheapest agencies, or you try and.
Well, there's an element. Yeah, there's an element of this as well, Steve. I mean, if I look at the community, if I look at the universe that I currently trade in, there's at least 4,500 line managers that will take the types of candidate that I want to place. Now, I know full well that to be a successful consultant, you only need 10 platinum customers. So if I want to, I can tell 4,490 to jog, right? So I only ever need 10 because I can sleep at night with 10. I've got 10 is enough for me, and 10 is not too many. So if I've got customers that are just price hunters, they'll become passive customers that I flick CVs at that I'm regenerating. Yeah.
And then when you say platinum customer, is that like a defined thing with specific criteria, or is that just when you know?
Yeah, no, it would be. It would be a customer with a great story to tell. So in other words, they've just received some funding. They've got some great tech. They're doing something great. They're doing something great in terms of candidate commercials. I don't know, bean bags and flip flops or whatever it is. I don't know, whatever it is. But so they've got a great story to tell. I like the size. The size demographics important to me as well. So I only really like the organisation between 50 and 300 people, because I know I can speak to a decision maker and not an influencer, not a CV passing service. I never want to get trapped with the deal prevention police. Do you know what I mean? I want to speak to the person that makes the decision. That's what's important to me. And then the obvious things around niche and location and that type of thing. But you put them through a funnel before you decide they're a great prospect or not.
So basically, identify companies you can work with quickly. You know, there's not going to be massive barriers to entry, and that also, you know, you're going to be able to sell them to a candidate. You're going to be able to actually sell that opportunity because of not just what the role does, but actually what happens with that business and why that business is great to work for, not just the job.
Absolutely right. 100%.
Yeah. Good stuff. So I've got a question from Jonathan. If the client's already released the role to one or two other agencies, how would you then deal with that situation? If it ticks a box in terms of the company size, this company you want to work with, you know they're a good prestigious company, but you've missed the boat in terms of exclusivity, what happens next?
So you must get interview slots. You must get interview slots. And the way that you get interview slots is, remember, whenever you want a client to do anything for you, all they're thinking is with him, what's in it for me, right? So you've got to portray what's in it for the customer. Mr. Customer, understand you've engaged a couple of partners. By the way, as well, always check the engagement from those partners. So you've got 3 other partners on it. How many profiles have you got in play? Only one, right? Well, if I was to show you a way that if you press pause with those partners for 14 days, we get this role filled with top 5% candidate, would you consider that? That's the first thing you do. If the client says, no, I'm happy with my partners, then I'm going to say, right, okay, all I need from you is 3 interview slots Tuesday of next week. Why is that? Well, I'll tell you why that is. I'm going to now go and engage the passive market, right? I'm able to unearth candidates via using SourceBreaker, via using the product that I need. I'm going to now to unengage the passive market. When I engage the passive market, to keep that passive market engaged, we've got to be able to definitively tell them when they can get in front of you. So actually, I don't just want first interview slots, I want second interview slots as well. And that's the way you do it. So and there's a beautiful phrase here. You say, look, I don't want to engage the passive market only for you to lose them to your competition. And that's like a dagger to the heart, to the client, right? They're always going to want to give you slots down there. So the minimum requirement is step 2 on the buyer staircase, which is interview slots. And that's what I do in that situation.
I think that's one of the things, isn't it? Is try and get as much control as you can do, and it's just important not to get drawn into working a role because there is a role, and you know, if you've got no control, it's not a great company to work with. It's obviously harder to make that decision in the current climate where in most cases there's fewer roles around. But it's not just taking on a role and working 10 rubbish roles with no control at companies that people don't want to work for.
Yeah, that's absolutely
right. And cracking on. I realise obviously that's more and more of a challenge right at the moment, but yeah, it's not selling yourself short and going after any old job. It's making sure you're going after the right ones.
Well, look, recruiters are positive people, right? Give us lemons, we'll try and make lemonade, right? And the most difficult word for a recruiter to say is no, right? You know what it's like, Mr. Recruiter, will you work, right? Will you work a role where I'm looking for a 6-foot midget? Yeah, of course I will. Will you do it against 6 other agencies? Yep. And will you do it knowing full well that I'm going to can the job in 4 weeks? Yeah. And we do it for 9%? Yeah. And then you come off the phone, say to your boss, just picked up a banger there, boss, right? Don't use the amount of jobs you've got as a badge of honor. Use the amount of quality jobs that you can forecast against, that when your boss comes to you and says what you're calling, what you're forecasting, what you're building, you can say with absolute confidence, that gaffer, I'm going to build that. They're the jobs you want, right? Believe in your service, believe in yourself. Don't work crap because it's just a false economy.
Yeah, absolutely. Good stuff. Right, a question from Amy. When asking for exclusivity, do you negotiate lower on rates automatically?
Never. No. What you do, Amy, you go totally the other way. Because what you do is, listen, never be the one that mentions money. Never be the side of the desk that mentions money. Because when you mention money, it's only going one way and it ain't up, right? The way that you do it is you say, by the way, actually, what happens is if you work with me exclusively, 1, your role goes to the top of my pile. 2, I'm able to engage my flexible resource team, my researchers, my resources. 3, I'm able to use our full suite of software tools. So therefore, what I'm doing actually is I'm giving you a better service for the same money. So you go totally the other way. Never, ever talk about money and always sell it the other way around. I'm giving you more for the same. It's not I'm getting more commitment, so I'll take less. I'm giving you more for the same.
Good stuff. Right. My question to you from Ali is, how do you handle a client that gives really slow feedback? Yes, yeah. We've kind of answered it a bit, but it comes back to the control side of things, I suppose, does it?
Yeah, and you nullify that. You nullify that at job qualification stage, because what I love to do at job qualification stage as well is say, right, what I'm going to do, one of the things we do that's unique at Ludlow, because that's my agency, one of the things we do at Ludlow that's unique is we design a unique recruitment plan for you. Oh, what's that, Trev? Well, basically, we look at your role specifically, and then what we decide is when I'm going to have a profile call, when you're going to do the first interviews, when you're going to do the technical testing, when you're going to do the second interviews, and then lastly, when you're going to make the offer. So let's put that all to bed now. Let's get that all done now. So you've got the peace of mind so that I'm going to go away and fill this role for you. So I love the unique recruitment plan. I really like that idea. But if you, once again, if you're trying to get, if you find yourself, right, I'll tell you a story. When I was a sales director, there was one phrase that was guaranteed for me to smash your face in, right? And that one phrase, if I said to you, how's that job going? And you said to me, I'm waiting for feedback. I wanted to eat my own feet every time I heard that, right? Because waiting for feedback in my binary, agricultural, sub 50 IQ recruitment head means I've lost control. When you qualify and control at job qualification stage, you are avoiding waiting for feedback. You're not waiting for feedback anymore.
Good man. Okay, so next up from David is, how would you win retained business from a company that's already got a PSL and they've got CVs in play for a role?
I'm never on anyone's PSL. All PSL means you can have all my crap jobs at lower rates. All a PSL is a spreadsheet that agencies get added to and knocked off, depending on how they're performing in the league table. Can't do me a favour. Listen, for me, you must badge yourself, and this is why I'm a firm believer in niche. Everything that we talk about on the platform on j9train.com, everything we talk about on there is about niche. It's about being a subject matter expert. So when I go to a client, I'll say, listen, I don't want to be on your PSL. I'm not a PSL supplier. I just want these requirements here. I'm a specialist in this area, and most of my clients use me to keep their PSL on their toes. Most of my clients use me to benchmark my profiles against theirs. They use me as a specialist recruiter, not a PSL recruiter. Listen, by the way, there's the odd PSL that's great, so I'm being a little bit harsh there. I'm generalising a little bit, but you know, there are, if your organisation, let's say that you just find Java developers, right, and you're working for a Java consultancy, it's worth being on their PSL, right? But fundamentally, if the organisations you're talking to have a wide suite of requirements, unless you've got a wide suite of consultants that work in specialist niche areas, you know, but I hear consultants objection handling, and they get the PSL objection, and their first question is, when's it up for review? Oh, don't do that. Don't ever do that. That's not the one. That's a whole other webinar, right? The PSL objection. There's a whole other webinar we can do another day. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah. For me, you sell individual searches. You're not a PSL recruiter.
I think also it comes down as well to this, suppose the stage. If the company has a PSL, you don't necessarily want to be on that PSL. It's like, how do you sell a retained search for that company? If they've got CVs in play and they have a PSL, and those CVs are the best CVs they've ever seen, and their PSL works at ridiculously low rates, the chance of winning retained business when they just have zero need is obviously going to be small. It's the opportunity, I think, needs to be there as much as anything. There will just be some opportunities where you're not going to win retained business on a high performant PSL. It's, you know, it's an opportunity.
Do you know what? Joe, don't be bonkers about it, right? If that organisation, their PSL is filling every requirement they've got in 25 minutes for 9.5%, I don't want that business. But what I do want to do is call back in 3 months and see if they're still doing it. So you never give a client up, but you don't call them every other week. You know, if a client says to you, my PSL are absolute dream time. You know, my PSL are two of my cousins and my uncle. You know what I mean? We're that close. Right? What you don't do, you're just not going to do business today. You're not. So don't fool yourself. Move on and find a better prospect. But call that client in 3 months' time and say, listen, last time we spoke, your PSL were brilliant. I know that things change. Recruiters move to other agencies and can't do stuff. And great agencies become not so great overnight at times. So things change. But you know, don't get into this bonkers mindset that you've got to trade with everyone all the time, because you haven't. You've got to develop your own PSL. That's what you've got to do.
Spot on. Okay, so Yaz is asking, obviously in the current market where roles are a bit trickier to come by, will you still be insisting on exclusivity, or do you still have a bit more flexibility?
The minimum requirement is interview slots. If I'm going to make an active search, my minimum requirement is interview slots. And by the way, I'd rather interview slots than exclusivity, because so many times, right, Steve, my exclusivity hasn't got interview slots, and I'll wave a great CV under my client's nose the next day. You tell me I'm not going to look at it, right? So if I've got interview slots, I've still got control over the process. Listen, the only reason I'd ever work a substandard job is to generate leads because of it, right? You know, but actually, there's a better way to generate leads now anyway. Do you know what I mean? So, Steve, develop one.
Just for the avoidance of doubt, by the way, everybody, I said to Trevor before this webinar, I was like, there's no need to plug SourceBreaker whatsoever, but obviously can't help himself. So I don't want anybody thinking I've been saying, oh yeah, chuck our name in there. Trevor's just a big advocate. So there you go.
Early adopter, man. I remember it was not much more than a spreadsheet. So yeah, early adopter, right?
Good man. Right, so we've got a question from Richard. So how do you handle clients who sold revenue generators, but all briefs go through HR and line manager contact is limited? Therefore, options to pick limited.
I don't. Deal prevention police. Now, actually, I need to caveat that a little bit. And once again, you don't have to trade with everyone. Stop thinking we've got to trade with everyone, because some clients are just crap, right? We just haven't got to trade with everyone, right? Now, having said that, right, there's a marked difference, I believe. So I do nearly all my work in the States now, right? And there's a marked difference in the caliber of the talent person in the States than in the UK. And the reason for that they're normally career talent people. So they haven't necessarily had a bad experience with an external UK agency, and then they've jumped the fence and gone internal and don't really like agencies that much. They haven't had a great experience themselves. So you're fighting that battle always. There's been a couple of UK talent people that I've been brilliant. But fundamentally, when you start identifying your prospects, then you're looking to identify prospects where you're speaking to decision makers. And there's nothing wrong with having a bunch of B-grade clients over here, where the feedback is slow, where you can recycle CVs, right? So you've got a CV, it's not any good for any of your premium clients. Go from your B-grade clients, I can sell it there, sell it there, sell it there, sell it there, sell it there. So you can feed that B-grade funnel with a CV. So what you're doing is you're regurgitating CVs, right? That's fine. But if you find the vast majority of your life you're engaging with talent or waiting for talent to give you feedback, there's that phrase again, then your portfolio of customers, I think you probably need to have a little bit of a closer look at it.
Good stuff. Yeah, I think that's the thing again, is it just highlighting not trying to work with everybody. If it doesn't work for you, you don't feel like you're going to get traction, no, then it's moving on to the next opportunity.
If you are going to work with clients that are talent heavy, procurement heavy, HR led, you've got to have about 30 of them. And they've got to all look for the same thing. You've got to be able to go deal the CV to 30 people. Yeah, that's a bit boring, isn't it?
Yeah. So Richard, just clarified his question. So what he's saying is about solid revenue generators. So clients that you make money from, they're good clients, you do deals with them, but your ability to pitch a CV into a decision maker or hiring manager, line manager is difficult. So you've got their cooperation, they're making you money, but you want to be able to sell that candidate into the hiring manager, but you're restricted in terms of your ability to speak to them.
There's two real key things here. The first key thing is you're making money, right? That's the first key thing, right? Because fundamentally, we work in the ultimate meritocracy. Recruitment doesn't see black, white, gay, straight, fat, thin, short, tall. It just sees revenue, right? So what you said there was that we're making money from that client. That's the first key thing. The only other opportunity you have is to get yourself an off-piste relationship with the hiring manager, which effectively means you've always got to line into that hiring manager, which means you can always speak to that hiring manager without the necessity of procurement or HR being involved in that conversation. That's the only other option you've got. Otherwise, the other part of that is you drink your milk, right? If you're making money from that client, then fair bloody play to you, man. You know, you're probably a better man than me, to be fair. If you're making money from a procurement-led client, there's nothing wrong with that. But what I would always look to do is have that client ticking away as a bit of bread and butter in the background. But when I'm business development, I'm looking for clients where I can speak to the person who is not the influencer, but the decision maker, I think.
Good shout. Jamie Rogers asking what you mean by non-signed terms. I think I can answer that. It's basically you just terms and conditions. You ping them along with your CV. They don't need to be signed and agreed by the client. Them reviewing the candidate and then interviewing the candidate implies acceptance of those terms. Is that fair?
Absolutely right. I couldn't have split it back myself, Steve.
Good stuff. Excellent. Right. On to the next one. Charlotte from Source says, thanks very much. Qualification and control together can be difficult if taking a job order from HR. I think that kind of covers the questions we've spoken about before, is if you can't get the level of control that you want, then they're potentially not the right client for you.
Yeah, absolutely right.
So Blair is asking, how would you roll out this process to existing clients?
Great news. You phone them up and say, great news, Mr. and Mrs. Client. Oh, what's that, Trev? We don't do contingent recruitment anymore. Let me tell you more about it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to make your life far more simple. You're going to spend less time hiring and you're going to get a better caliber of candidate. Would you like me to tell you how I'm going to do that? You know, I would. Right, okay, let's go. You know, so all you do, you got to develop your recruiter's playbook. and in your recruiter's playbook are all your different pitches, all your different big, juicy, need-creating questions, and all your different objection handles. And once you've got those 3 nailed and you can practice those religiously, then we're on the right track. But yeah, for me, that's what I'm phoning up and saying, listen, look, great news. I'm able to offer you something that we haven't, we're working in a different way. We've listened to our customer portfolio and we're working differently. We want to save you time and get you better candidates. And this is how we're going to do it. And that's your initial pitch.
I think the advantage you've got there as well is if they're an existing client, you would hope they're naturally going to be more receptive to what you've got to say as well.
You could probably say it face to face, couldn't you? You could probably say it face to face over a coffee or whatever, over lunch or whatever you're doing,
Yeah. But I think as well, it's just always remembering with every single part of this, too many recruiters that I speak to almost feel grateful to be getting a job from a client and feel almost like they're almost lucky to be getting that role from them. It's making sure you're always putting yourself on a level playing field with that customer and knowing that you're selling a benefit to them, but it is, you're selling to them, it's a genuine benefit to them. Like all the stuff they're getting from this.
I couldn't agree more. Steve, I couldn't agree with you more, right? Look, I understand it's difficult for younger recruiters in experience to really believe in their own personal brand, right? But, genuinely, the challenge is when someone says, I've got a job for you, the recruiter's tail starts wagging. They get all excited and they don't take half the information they need. The reality is, it's almost like when someone says, I've got a job for you, everything should go, just slow everything down and go, right. Because how about this, right? When you're business developing a client, they're vetting you. As soon as they give you a job, you're vetting them. It turns on its head. You're deciding. Now it's your decision now. And listen, look, if you want the Trev experience, you've got to give me some commitment. And that should listen. You're all great. Just because you're a young recruiter, doesn't mean you're a great recruiter. Doesn't mean you don't work really bloody hard and know your market and know your candidate. Doesn't mean all that. So believe in yourself. Have some belief and stand up. If you don't stand up for something, you fall for everything, right? So stand up for it.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely absolutely critical. Just knowing that they are getting a benefit from it, it is helpful for them. You're going to be able to deliver for them.
Absolutely.
Okay. So question from Kate: how do you overcome the objection of I want to go to multiple agencies to get a wider reach on the market?
Yeah, so I do. By the way, the first thing you do when anyone gives you an objection is you never come back with a smart rebuttal. The first thing you do is come back with an empathy statement. Do you know what? Get that? Totally understand why you might think that. I wonder if I could just share something with you in terms of the way that agencies actually work. So, Kate, let's say Kate's a client. Kate, you suggest that you want to get a wider reach in the market by going to multiple partners. Actually, that's probably the worst way to get a wider reach in the market by going to multiple partners. Because when you go to multiple partners, you just put us in a fastest finger first foot race. Let me explain what happens to those 6 partners when you go to them all at the same time. They do a Boolean search, they phone a candidate, find out if the candidate's up for it, and they fling the CV at your desktop. So effectively, by going to multiple partners, you're gambling with that hire. By going to one partner, you're effectively allowing that one partner to take a full requisition of the market. Tell you what, don't even come to me for too long. Just give me 7 days before you go to another partner. Let me show you the difference. Kate, the client, Kate, listen, if you want to hire a piano player, you don't talk to them about playing the piano, do you? You ask them to play the piano for you. So give us this job exclusively and you'll see the difference in service. Look, I'm only paid on success, right? It doesn't cost you anything to work with me exclusively. You can even view some profiles if you like. Probably not because we'll just book interviews. You even do that for free. So that's the way I go. By saying, listen, by going to multiple partners, you're actually making the search worse and cutting and narrowing down the search because they're just trying to find Mr. Right now rather than Mr. or Mrs. Right.
Absolutely. Okay, on to the next one. So Edward is asking, what's the best way to secure interview slots if you're a bit late to the party and another agency already has interviews on the roll?
It doesn't change. It doesn't change. But I always stick my neck on the line a little bit and suggest, listen, I'm a niche supplier. I live, sleep, eat, breathe this market. I can engage the passive market for you. All I need is a little bit of commitment from you. And I promise you this, I'll put my neck on the line and say that the guys that I put in for interview will be better than the guys you've already got in for interview. Tell you what, all I need is hour and a half in your diary. Spend that half hour with each of my guys next Tuesday. Let me prove it. So what you got to do, you buy yourself an opportunity, you buy yourself a chance. And the way you do it is by saying to the client, the benefit to you by giving me interview slots is I'll get you better people than everyone else does. Once again, it's your belief system, isn't it? You got to believe it, right? Or fake it till you make it. You know, I'm still faking it, to be fair. But there you go. Yeah.
So next question up is from Lewis. Would you always ask for 14 days exclusivity?
No, not necessarily.
No.
Not necessarily. If I'm working contract 4 hours, if I'm honest. If I'm working perm, it could be. See, what Lewis, what I'd expect, and I know I'm sure you are. I'm sure you're experienced in your niche, and by taking the job brief, you're going to have a really good understanding of finding out how long it's going to take you to find good people. You know, but I think if you ask for 28 days, the client might balk on you, right? What you can do, what I know, there's another really nice, tidy little trick of the trade here. You can ask for 7 days. On the 6th day, present a couple of great candidates to extend it for another 7. So you give and you take, you give and you take. It's up to you. It's up to you, really, mate. But I think clients probably, just my experience tells me, clients probably won't sign up for an exclusive period much longer than 14 days. Probably certainly longer than 21.
Good stuff. And second question is: would you suggest dates for the interviews or let the client decide?
Can you open your diary right now?
Yeah.
Mr. and Mrs. Client on the job spec call. Listen, can we get your diary open right now? Can you tell me what Tuesday afternoon, Wednesday afternoon, or Thursday afternoon next week looks like? I need a 3-hour slot. Take it. Yeah. Don't ever. When a client says to you, I hear this a lot. Just find me and I'll interview them. No. Don't allow that to happen. Don't allow that to happen. Get them now. Get them pinned. Get the slots booked in the diary. And you can if you want. If the client says, well, I've got 2, 3, and 4 next week, send a meeting invite there and then. Right, no problem. I'm booking that time in. Candidate interviews 2, 3, and 4 next week. There you go. Meeting request. Can you please accept that for me? So that's in your diary. Your belt and break. No, do it there and then. Get the slots defined. Detail.
Definitely. I think that's something we encourage our sales guys as well. Whenever they're in meetings with, recruitment business owners, is that don't leave before you've got the next step booked in. I think that's just a key part of everything. Is that when you're on a call with somebody, you're never going to have more control than when you're on that call. It's like you said earlier,
absolutely right.
As soon as that opportunity passes, it's that much harder to get them on the phone, to get them booked in. And where you've got that captive audience, is get as much of it closed off as possible before.
Wholeheartedly. And the key is that you control the forward action. Don't be laissez faire and allow that forward action to control you. Oh, when would you like to? No. This is what we're going to do.
It's that whole thing as well. About being at partner level with them. Don't see yourself as subservient to your customer. You're on a level. You're the expert at recruitment. They're the expert at what they do. And the more you're seeing yourself as that partner level, the more you'll feel comfortable exerting the, make sure you've got that control over the customer.
And do you know what? Do you know the best way to never worry about your customers again is meet them, because they're normally the most wholly unimpressive people you'll ever meet in all of your life. And you think, why was I putting you on a pedestal? You're a jerk. You know what I mean? So you don't say that to them, obviously. If anything, the candidate's more important these days. When the world goes back to normal, the candidate is more important. Remember, it's the candidate that earns your money. The client just signs off the invoice. So if anyone's going to get treated better, it's the candidate. For some reason, we put clients on a pedestal and start to fear them. It's got 2 arms and 2 legs, and they pay the same. They pay the same fiver for a pint of beer as we do. It's no difference.
Yeah, I think a couple of things to help with the mindset of making sure you even feel yourself that you're on a sort of a partner level and actually can be a proper value add to the customer. It's things like the customer's not going to have access to what fair market rate is, whether that's perm or contract, very easily in terms of what salary they should be paying. You're in a far better position to be able to say to the customer, you're probably never going to tell them they're paying too much, but you could reasonably educate them to say, if they're looking to pay 50k for a role that is actually 60k, you should feel comfortable knowing that you know more than that customer does, and you can be educating them about what's happening in the market, what the trends are. You're the expert in recruiting people. They're the expert in their field of what they do. But be comfortable that you know more than they do, and then that's where you'll feel more comfortable being able to partner with them and push back on things.
Your job title is recruitment consultant, therefore you're paid to consult. Your job title is not recruitment order taker, right? It's recruitment consultant. So consult. And actually, do you know what? Your clients are like you much more for it. You know, they really will. You know, if you say Mr. or Mrs. Client, the caliber of candidate that you're looking for just does not exist for this money. Let me show you. Increase your budget by 10K, or at least be prepared to review candidates at 60, you know, whatever it looks like. Consult, push back, stand up straight always. You have a much better, you've got to do it early on, you have a much better relationship.
Definitely. So Rob is asking, what is TP's impact of a client not being exclusive? I don't know if I understand that 100%, but
no, I want to. Can Rob give us a bit more context around that? Perhaps post another question if you can.
Yeah, Rob, if you can just clarify that, we'll jump on to other questions to circle back to that one. So Chris is asking, how do you pitch your services against an internal recruitment team?
Time versus requirement. So if anyone's got an internal recruitment team, right? Well, let me tell you a couple of things. 9.9 managers are unhappy with their internal. 9.9 managers out of 10 are unhappy with their internal recruitment team. The way you unearth the need is not by asking a negative question, right? If you want one, if a client says to you, if a client says you've got an internal team, one question, Mr. Client, what's your current longest open requirement? Right? Find out. Whatever client says, 4 weeks. You've had a client, you got no offer against it. Crikey, really? What's the impact on you there? So there you create, and also always think about time versus requirement. Flick onto the careers page. Mr. Client, can I ask you how many people you've got in your internal recruitment team? I've got 2. Right, but you've got 60 roles live on your website here. So that means they're working 30 roles a week, which means they can just about spend an hour per role. So therefore, how are they going to find this specialist candidate for you? Tell me again, what's your longest open requirement? What you also do is suggest that some of the best relationships we've ever had with an agency are partnering the internal team, working alongside them, not eating their cheese, just making them look good. So that's the way I'll go with that one. You won't always win that one, but you won't always win everything. But you've got to try and win. Do you know what I mean? So.
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the most important things as well is always be thinking about being able to tell stories and give examples of where that exact situation was mirrored with another customer of yours, and you know how it was successful. Obviously, the earlier you are in your careers, it's harder to have those stories, but you might use a bit of poetic license, however you might want to describe it.
You can also use the royal we. So rather than using I, you can say we as an agency. Where we as an agency have been, even if you haven't got success stories, get the success stories from around the business and use the royal we. Even if you're a bit of a rook, which is cool, which is fine. Just use the royal we, where we've been really successful over the last few years as an agency, because that's just telling the truth. Or listen, a little bit of creativity never hurt anyone. Right? So you know, we can. I've been down that road a few times myself, and I'm not wholeheartedly against it.
I think that's the thing. The ability to tell a story is very, very powerful, and it's like that third-party endorsement. You're kind of giving that endorsement yourself, but being able to say a third party was in this situation, and it makes people feel more comfortable. So, okay, well, if it worked for them, it could potentially work for us.
Can agree more.
Okay. So we've got a few questions we've probably already answered. So I'm just scanning through.
Okay.
So somebody just asking something a bit more specific with regards to COVID. Do you see that having an impact on being able to negotiate fees with customers or retainer costs? Obviously, there's fewer jobs out there, so that could encourage a bit more of a race to the bottom in terms of fees. How do you make sure that when there's fewer jobs, more competition, you're able to maintain your margins?
You've got to understand the appetite of the client. It's about understanding the client's appetite. You know, if a client genuinely wants a top 5% passive candidate, right, then there's an element that the service you offer. I haven't had, really interestingly, my marketplace, right? In my marketplace, the FANG have been really aggressive. Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, Google have been massively aggressive during COVID, gone on huge hiring drives to get in front because they've got war chests of cash, right? So my marketplace, it's still been very, very active in terms of those guys coming to market. But I don't envisage any rate negotiation in terms of service for me, because remember, the best way to make more money as a recruiter is not to do more deals, is to do better deals. You've only got so much time to do that work during the month, right? I haven't seen it. I don't envisage it. I don't envisage, you know, and if people start offering silly rates, you've got to ask yourself why. They're up against the wall. You know, they're surely up against the wall, not making good decisions. So if they're not making good decisions around rates, they're not necessarily going to make good decisions around the candidates they select either, because they're working very, very quickly, I'd suggest. So I haven't seen it, and I don't see it happening. If I were you, I certainly wouldn't be thinking about offering it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good stuff. Okay. So one of the biggest, that's a question from Sheena. This is a question from Rihanna. One of the biggest blockers I've been getting is because the market's flooded with candidates. They're seeing a lot of profiles direct. So I can save them sell them the time saved bit and the quality aspect, but how would you overcome that?
Got to be a service pitch. So if you can't sell a candidate, sell a service. There's got to be something that you're able to do as an organisation. You need to sit and get your head together. I don't know what your market is. I don't know what your company is. I don't know what your niche is. But if you can't sell people, you sell service, right? So I work with a construction agency called Core. You probably know them, Steve. Core Atlantic, and effectively they do non-skilled labour a lot of the time. So therefore they can't say, listen, this geezer's brilliant at pushing a broom, right? They can't do that. But what they do sell is rapidity of service, reliability, compliance, opportunity to have people on site very, very quickly at short notice, 24 hours a day response. So they've got a really nice capability service pitch that they put together rather than a candidate pitch. So you need to work on your capability pitches rather than your candidate pitches if you're in markets that are not candidate driven. So without knowing more about your business and sitting down and talking to you, that's what you got. You develop your capability pitches, your service pitches more than anything else.
I think another idea potentially is also just planting the seed in the customer's head that what they should be expecting from their candidates can now be at a higher level as well. So don't settle for the candidates you would have hired 3 months ago. You can now be asking for more from those candidates. So again, it's getting to the bottom of what the actual need is for that customer that Trevor was talking about earlier. So what's the actual personal impact for them, as now being able to actually ask for more from your candidates and then being better able to make sure that that need is met, or make sure that that problem doesn't actually arise. If you can get somebody who's top 10% of the market previously, well, now you should be looking to get a candidate who's top 5%, and obviously the result should be higher. Instead of a 200k salesperson, you should be able to get a 300k salesperson
for 200k a lot of time. Yeah, wholeheartedly agree. Couldn't agree more. Steve's currently hiring from them at the moment, basically.
Well, I wish I was, mate. Right. Okay. Right. Next up. So Ed asked. I think this was. I'll let you answer this one, Trevor. But just ask about how many new business calls should you be making a week or month?
Okay, so my non-negotiable every single day myself is 5 prospect calls a day. So
regardless of you working on finding candidates or anything, you're always making time to make those calls.
The ultimate input on a daily basis is 15 conversations as a minimum. My preference is 25, but the minimum standard is 15 conversations a day, out of which 5 of those must be to prospects. And those prospects can be new clients or lapsed clients where we haven't had a requirement of 6 months. But yeah, minimum 5. I know we're getting off. It's worth answering, do you know what I mean? But we're getting off pace a little bit. I'll answer anything, no problem at all.
Yeah.
Minimum 5 prospects a day, no matter what. I
think just to reiterate on that, that echoes something I heard from my old boss, who was 600k a year biller, said exactly the same thing. Is even if you're resourcing for a specific role, just carve out that time to just make 5 prospect calls and have that religiously as part of what you're doing. So I think
totally agree. Yeah, totally. Listen, resourcing roles is what you have to do, and it's honourable, right? Resourcing roles looks after today, but prospecting clients looks after tomorrow. And you don't want to arrive at tomorrow unless you've done the work today. Really, really important.
Absolutely. Cool. That's a question from Ed. So a question from Eamon here is, do you ever sell in a candidate on the pitch at the end to book an interview slot?
Yeah. So Ed, when you're working really well in your niche, quite often you'll pick up a requirement and you'll have candidates in your head already. So you're absolutely right. So listen, brilliant. Based on the information you've given me, let me tell you about an absolute rock star who's working me exclusively at the moment. They're X, they're Y, they're Z. Got their diary in front of me. What are you doing at 10 o'clock tomorrow? Let's go. Absolutely, yeah, wholehearted, wherever possible. Remember, listen, take every call as far as you can. Sell in a straight line. Sell in a straight line until you're told to stop. That doesn't mean be aggressive, and because we were always taught 25 years ago, manipulate them, keep them on the phone. No, I'm not saying that. Walk forwards in a straight line until you're told to stop. It's all on the platform. It's all on J9 Train. All this stuff's on j9train.com. It's all on there. All on there.
Yeah. So Jordan's asking about other open question you can ask the customer when it sounds like the requirement is quite urgent. I think, again, that's probably something to dig into a bit more detail on Junction 9 in terms of like detailed questions that you want to be asking.
Absolutely right,
yeah. Sarah is asking about benefit-led statements you've had success with in previous pitches. I think there'll be endless ones again that you could go into there. That's just going to be like very much scenario-based.
It's always everything comes back to resource, time, and money. RTM. Every single benefit statement will come back to one of those things somewhere along the line, right? And to take a feature into a benefit, the last part of the statement must start with, and the benefit to you of this is, or how this helps you is. I could do a whole webinar on features and benefits, by the way, which is the first thing I've learned in sales. But yeah, we can go down that road, but it's going to take a while, I think.
Yeah. So
and
Felix is asking.
I've just opened a bottle of red on my terrace as well, Steve. You know what I mean? So it's just breathing for me right now. So. I'm in France, by the way. I live in France, just in case you didn't know. So.
Living the dreams. Living in France, selling into America. So Felix is asking. I think I know the answer to this one, but what if they can't give you interview slots? I think really
passive search, Felix. A passive search. Yeah. As I said, what I'll do is I'll take the job spec, say thanks ever so much, and I'll tell the client what's going to happen. Mr. or Mrs. Client, I want to search my network for a couple of hours. If I find someone, I'll talk to you about them. Otherwise, any profile that comes across my desk, I'll sell into you, I'll talk to you about. But what I'm not going to do is carry out an active search with no control against it, because that's the guaranteed way to miss target. That's the exact way not to be looking forward to your one-to-one with your manager at the end of the month.
Yeah. Right, question from Claire. This is a quick one. What industry do you work in? What industry do you recruit into?
Data scientist, yeah. Most of my experience over my career has been in tech. Probably at 22 or 23 out of 25 years.
Do you change your approach? We've spoken about working with internal or not, but do you change your approach when you're dealing with them? Obviously, they'll be more familiar with the Jedi mind tricks.
Yeah. I've got there's once again in your playbook. There's an internal recruiter's pitch and a hiring manager's pitch, and they're different pitches. The internal recruiter's pitch is very friendly, is experience-based, talking about where we've done great work, help internal recruiters get promoted previously. It's compliance, it's stability. It's we don't want your low-hanging fruit. We want to shoot your specific difficult requirements, working alongside, collaborative. It's that pitch. There's a whole different pitch for internal recruiters. And once again, it's a session in itself, and it is on the platform as well. So
yeah. But the key thing there as well is just not obviously they're your adversary in a lot of cases if you're an agency recruiter on this call, which obviously most people will be. So an adversary in many cases if you're dealing with 9, but when you're dealing with them, it's all about how are you going to help make them successful rather than having that adversarial right. I want to fill roles you can't fill. If you're taking that kind of tone, you're going to struggle. It's more like how can we work together and be successful? Like what are the bits I can pick up on that you haven't got time for?
You're never going to get business by being confrontational. Right, and like Steve says, the internal recruiter is never your enemy. The situation is often your enemy, but it's certainly not the internal recruiter. 100%.
Yeah. Trevor Amon says, "What is the picture in the background say?"
It says, Amon, it's a piece of art that my wife had made in Brighton specifically. I'm going to swear. I'm going to apologise up front. Okay, it's the only. I promised I wouldn't swear on this. It says unfucking believable. That's what it says, Amy. It's a piece of art that my wife had made, yeah. Thanks for that, Amy. Cheers.
Okay, right. So we've got so if you engage with larger corporates, how can you tailor the process to suit you and use the exclusivity approach?
Yeah, for me, if there is an opportunity to engage with larger corporates, as long as you're still engaging with a decision maker. Now, I've got to be honest with you. When I started out in recruitment, I just wanted to deal with Microsoft, Hewlett-Packard, IBM, British Telecom, and I did. And wholeheartedly, the experience was fairly poor from a recruiter's perspective. If you're going to engage with a corporate, make sure you engage with someone who runs a business for that business. So you can have a guy that runs a business for Microsoft, working for Microsoft, that has control over that business unit. What you don't want to do, because the challenge with large organizations is you get wrapped up in so much red tape. if you are going to go down that road and work with large organisations, you've got to fill the front of the pipeline. You've got to manage your candidates' expectations, and you can't really forecast anything. I'm just not a fan, to be honest. I'm just not a fan of large organisation. I never have been since the experiences I've had, but it's possible if you've got a decision maker within them.
I think that's the thing. Most spaces, not all by any means, and apologies for those who operate in spaces where it's not the case, but you'll find generally, even in like traditionally large organisation sectors like pharma, for example, there's a lot of emerging businesses. There's so much private equity, venture capital funding out there that gives you the opportunity to work with cash-rich, relatively small companies, like that sweet spot you're talking about, Trev, 50 to 300 people, where you just don't have the red tape to jump through. You don't have to suffer the long hiring processes. And it's really, like, for people obviously work in some sectors that's not possible, sorry about that, but it's so many sectors now. If you're verticals, finance, operations, marketing, HR, you know, obviously technology, there's small to medium enterprises that have got the cash to invest that don't have the processes that are going to slow you down. Just keeping your eyes peeled for them.
Oh yes, it's about identifying your prospects quite carefully who you go after.
Definitely. So if you're working with a client and they say, let's you know, prove yourself first before they'll do a retainer, we'll do a retainer next time. Yeah, how do you overcome that one?
So absolutely right. Of course, I'll prove myself. I just need some minimum commitment for me to be able to prove myself. For me to be able to provide you with a proper service, there's a minimum level of commitment I need. The absolute minimum level of commitment I need is for interviews like your diary next week. Let me explain why. Right, that's it. You know, and then you feel that. Then we talk retainer. By the way, as well, you know, if we're going to talk retainer next time, let's talk it this time. Why wait? Why wait? Let's talk now. Let's introduce that conversation now.
Cool. Right, Mika's asking about retaining control over interview slots and the current uncertainty and the market economy. I think we pretty much covered that previously.
Yeah. You can't. You've got to do it at qualification. You can't do it. It's too late otherwise.
Yeah. Charlotte's asking, do you walk away if the client is showing interest but not ready to commit yet to, you know, interview slots? It's that passive search, active search again, isn't it? It's, you know, you're not going to spend a lot of time on it.
Absolutely right. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Yeah. Believe me when I say this, and it's based on all my experience and all the mistakes that I've made. Your fill rates just go like that. They go out massively if you don't get commitment. And actually, all commitment is asking an extra couple of questions and have a decent pitching statement to back it up. That's all it is. It's nothing more than that. And do you know what as well? You know when you ask for a retainer and you don't get it, they don't say to you, "Sorry, not working with you now. You shouldn't have asked for that retainer." You're in a win-win situation. You'll never lose the job. You won't lose the job by asking for more. At the end of the day, you'll still have a job, and you'll understand how committed your client is to the process.
I think that's the key thing, isn't it? Is, again, not just feeling subservient to them, is that they're not going to commit, then the alarm bell should be going off, because they're either not serious about the role or your chances of getting the role hired are pretty low. Yasin's asking about, if you set the timescale, what do you advise if you set the timescales for each stage of the process, but they're failing to meet those? Should you bin the client?
They're failing to meet them, or you're failing to meet them?
They're failing to meet them.
You give everyone a second chance. You know, something happens that a client just can't make the first interviews on that day, then of course they get a second chance. But if it starts to be a continuous thread, then that goes from being an active to a passive search. You know, everyone gets a second chance. Everyone can make a mistake, right? As recruiters, we make mistakes. You know, but if a trend or a theme emerges, then that you're wasting your time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Barry asked a really good question here. So you perform really well on exclusive for your customer, and they think you're the best recruiter since sliced bread, and they know that they don't need to pay you up front because they know you're going to fill their roles for them exclusive. How do you make that transition to retained from exclusive? That's a really long answer. We can point them to your you know, to your content on
it is a really long answer because your retained search should feature far more specific, bespoke parts than your exclusive interview slots. Your exclusive interview slots pitch is that you're running really fast at a job, as fast as you can, 14 days, and get the best candidates you can. The retained search is something that's very, very different. You're not selling apples against apples at all. But the first thing you've got to understand in your organisation is the difference between the retained search and the exclusivity. And it is all on the platform as well. But yeah, that's a big. That could take me 20 minutes to answer that one, to be fair. So that would be pretty unfair on the rest of the people left on the webinar, to be honest. But it is all on the platform as well.
Good stuff. Okay. So what advice someone's saying they're working in a low volume, high margin agency, it's a good starting point, to be honest, to help give confidence to turn down roles that aren't great, knowing that another role might not be soon around the corner. So it's not you can get good fees out of them, but there's not many jobs.
Time to time, you might have to take a punt. From time to time, if your revenue radar is bleeping at you, saying, crikey, there's a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow here, then every now and then you might have to take a punt. But what you don't want to be doing, you only ever want to be spending 15 to 20% of your time taking punts, rather than 80 to 90% of your time taking punts. There's a big difference. There's a big difference.
I think you're starting from a good point there, the fact that you're in a high margin space. Ollie,
Yeah,
from the sound of things, the low volume, high margin, obviously your reward for getting it right is pretty good. One of the big things I'd be wondering there is if you're in a space that's low volume and high margin, so the market forces, like if the margins are high, it means that supply is difficult. And so then the question is, why is the role not a great one if the margins are high? What's wrong with the company or the hiring manager, and is there anything you can do to influence that and control that? And again, it's about being a partner and not being afraid to say to people, look, your Glassdoor ratings particularly low, or the salary you're looking to pay is not going to attract people. There's going to be something that will, a lever that you can pull to turn a role from being unattractive to to being far more attractive, whether that's salary or positioning, whatever it is. They're trying to unearth that, make it more fillable.
Agreed.
Sumit is asking, how can we get a demo if we're interested in buying the software? So for Junction 9, if you visit
drop me an email. Drop me an email or drop me a message on LinkedIn, or I'm not hard to find. Give us a shout, and I can either do a demo for you or send you over a recorded online demo that we've done previously.
Yeah, fabulous.
Thank you, mate. Thanks for the inquiry. Thank you very much.
No worries. Cool. So Jason asking, how do you know if the client is going to be interested in your CVs for your interview slots? I mean, that comes down to if you've qualified it properly and asked the right questions.
Yeah. Once again, if you've qualified the role properly, you'll understand whether the candidate exists or not. You'll understand whether you're looking for a 6-foot midget or a genuine candidate, right? So, but and I didn't do the basic job qualification with you because I think it probably would have bored you, right? So, but the good basic juicy, I'm sure you've got a job spec qualification form in the agency that you tick the boxes on. Get that done first. Understand if the candidate's out there. If the candidate's out there, no reason why not. If the candidate's not out there, tell the client there and then you don't think the candidate's out there. And they're going to have to change some of the parameters, be it skill set, because we know the vast majority of job specs, at least 25% of the skills represent the wish list anyway. Do you know what I mean? So, Mr. Client, don't tell me your remit, tell me your 3-mit. What are the 3 most important things this candidate's got to have? So.
Yeah, I think it's also uncovering as well anything that puts a particular, like a client off about particular candidates. If you're concerned about you've not got enough detail out of the qualification, is that if there's anything that will put a hiring manager off a candidate as well? What
in terms if you haven't, if once again, your basic qualification is just as important as your more advanced qualification we've just done here. You've got to do it all. You've got to do it. No, let's. The great Tony Burns said, if you want someone to take a job spec, give it to a rookie, not an experienced consultant, because a rookie will check every box. An experienced consultant will assume what the client's going to say.
Yeah, so, story. Right, James Lawson, a good question here. What if your niche is HR?
What's the difference? What's the difference, man? Listen, I would suggest that good HR people are just as candidate-driven market as anything else. And if your niche is HR, you design your pitches around that, because you whilst the pitching methodology works for any type of pitch you're on, the actual pitching statements will differ from market to market. And there's an element of understanding. And once again, listen, any pitch that you give is led by the questions that you've asked previously anyway. So you ask your big, juicy, need creating questions, which allow you to pitch effectively off the back end. So, you know, there is no difference if you know your market. So you tailor your pitch to your marketplace. Don't it's any different, mate. Don't it's any different, you know.
Yeah, good stuff. Okay, right, next question. So where are we? Do you like job order sheets / forms with your tick box questions?
Yeah, I do. If you can't have them on your CRM, you know, because you know a lot of CRMs can do them for you these days. But yes, I do, because the devil's in the detail when you're qualifying a role. And what will tend to happen is if you're not working from a job spec form or a job qualification form, then you're likely to miss detail. And you know what happens is that the line manager puts down the phone and they go on voicemail for the next 18 months. You know, you never get over them again. You know, it's like, isn't it? So yeah, I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan. Yeah.
I think for me, even when I was 5 years in, I would still religiously use a job qualification form. So I just wanted to make sure that I just didn't miss any boxes. Because otherwise, you end up with a much harder job to fill, didn't you? If you haven't qualified the arse out of them, there's loads of things that you'll have left. You'll have a smaller candidate pool.
And I genuinely think that line managers at line manager school are taught to go on voicemail. It's something they have to. It's a part of line manager school they have to go through, because you never go over them again.
Yeah. So. Sean is asking, I think I'll answer this one very quickly. When you're speccing a candidate via email, do you attach your terms or trust your client and will not backdoor you? I would terms every single time, 100%.
The challenge that you have though is attachments on spec emails send emails into junk filters.
Right. Okay.
So there's a challenge there. So if you can do, but quite often what you'll find is that when you spec emails, so I've got a different email signature for specking, which has got no links, no pictures, nothing on it at all. Because the larger the email, the more, and if it's from an unknown email address, the more likely it's going to get sent into the junk mail or a spam filter, and you won't get it seen. So best practice is you're absolutely right, please do. But reality is you can't, because there's be a vast majority. But do your terms as early as you can. You never let an interview take place without your terms being signed.
Cool. Okay. So somebody here is saying, you mentioned you don't do PSL agreements. Would you not agree that a PSL agreement is good for future long-term business? From Lee.
Yeah, it depends. I think I did say, what I did say is, you know, if you just place blue ones and all you do is place blue ones, right? And the organisation you're talking to is an organisation that is a consultancy that's just full of blue ones, then it's always worth being on a PSL. But only be on a PSL if you can facilitate the requirements on it. If you can take the wallet, be on the PSL, right? But also, don't get stars in your eyes about getting on PSLs, because experience tells me there's more substandard PSLs out there than good PSLs, and a PSL is no guarantee of long-term business, because long-term business is dependent on the client, the person that you speak to, rather than an agreement, which is often renewable every year anyway.
Yeah. Okay, right. One from Jason. We currently have around 95 direct applications overnight, so I'm going to go through those and go from there. So that's an objection. How would you handle that when someone's said, I've got 90 odd objections?
The only way you'll ever handle that is if you've got an absolute rock star of a candidate and say, listen, let me save you some time and put this particular candidate at the top of that pile. Let me save you some time and just suggest you just engage with this one candidate. What would you rather do? Identify a brilliant candidate in 5 minutes, or spend 36 hours kissing frogs before you get a prince? So that's how, but once again, it might not work, but give it a shot. Nothing more. Listen, I haven't got any sex panther here, but work 60% of the time, all the time. You know, there's no absolute, but that's how I go with it. Let me save you that time. Let me save you that time. Because I tell you what, do you want to go through those 95 applicants? Do you want to sit there, miss EastEnders, and go through those 95 applicants? Or would you like me to go bang with a candidate that I know you're going to want to see, that can be with you tomorrow morning at 9:30? Like I say, not just going to do. So, okay, so when will you've got? Then you've got to revert back. When will you have got through the applicants? Then I'm going to speak to you. So yeah, but that's always got on the front foot there for me.
So a really good question from Ashley. We're only able to do a couple more because we've run out of time now. So anybody's questions we don't end up being able to ask, do feel free to drop Trevor a direct message on
100%.
LinkedIn
Yep.
and ask him on there. But a really good question from Ashley. Obviously, we're asking for exclusivity, but how do you formalise the exclusive period? Do you leave it at their word, or do you do anything to actually?
No, you've either got an addendum in your terms that you send over, or you send them over an email that they've got to reply back to. So yeah, you always formalise everything where possible, and the least formality that I'd suggest would be an email they reply back to, basically. Because the reality is, right? The reality is exclusivity doesn't hold up in court. You understand what I mean? It doesn't. But you've got to operate in best practice. You've got to give that client that warm, fuzzy feeling that they're working with one specialist rather than 6 generalists, and they're really comfortable to be working on this role as a partnership together. So have an addendum in your terms, or send over an email.
Good stuff. Right, okay, we've got a fair few questions more, but what we're going to do, guys, I've sent the links for Trevor's profile, so ask him any questions on there. So connect with Trevor anyway. Even if you don't have any questions, you'll get loads more good content from him. Feel free to connect with me as well. Follow Junction 9, follow SourceBreaker. All of the links should be in the chat on this webinar, and we'll be sending the webinar out for recording as well. So feel free to send it on and share it with your colleagues as well. Good stuff. Great stamina there, dealing with all those questions, Trev. Hope that's been useful for everyone. As I say, ping us with any questions. I'm sure Trevor will be happy to answer any of them. But yeah, there'll be so much more content on job qualifications, on absolutely everything you need on Junction 9, the website, the link of which is in the chat. Cheers, guys. Thanks very much for your time.
Thanks very much, everyone. Thanks for your time. Thanks, Steve. Bye-bye now.
Bye,
everyone. Bye. Bye.